News now.
It's the first 2024 voting. I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News. The Iowa caucuses.
You got to get out. You can't sit home. If you're sick as a dog, you say, darling, I got to make it.
Former President Trump's maintained a big lead in the polls, but Nikki Haley's been rising.
I know you're excited. I'm excited because it's been 11 months.
Ron DeSantis tells Fox News Sunday.
There's not been a candidate that's worked harder. There's not been a candidate that's put in more work. And I think particularly here in Iowa, Iowans noticed that.
But this isn't a primary where polls open early and people vote all day. Instead, they'll gather tonight and discuss the candidates. Then they'll write their choice on paper and the votes are tallied in each caucus location. But will the weather have some people stay home? It's the coldest caucus day ever. Wind chills around 30 below zero tonight. And Fox Business Network's Grady Trimble reports.
Former President Trump is counting on supporters in rural areas, and that's notable because it's quite possible there are still roads in those areas that could be covered in snow. There are reports the Trump campaign is identifying supporters in key areas who have four-wheel drive so they can help shuttle other caucus goers to the caucus sites.
Also in Iowa, the principal of Perry High School has died. 10 days after Dan Marburger was shot trying to shield students. A sixth grader was also killed by a 17-year-old student gunman who also injured six others until he killed himself. As Israel keeps waging war against Hamas in Gaza.
Iran-backed Houthi rebels launched their first new attack in the Red Sea since joint coalition strikes targeted the group last week. We do understand, according to U.S. Central Command, that an American fighter jet shot down an anti-ship cruise missile that was launched toward the USS Laboon.
Fox's Trey Yingst. Award season's here. They hand out the Emmys tonight. The Bear and Succession were honored as the top TV shows in the Critics' Choice Awards a week after winning Golden Globes. As for movies, Oppenheimer got Best Picture and 7 other awards. America's listening to Fox News.
Stay on top of the latest forecast with America's Weather Team in the palm of your hands.
Here's the latest from America's Weather Center.
It's Fox weather updates throughout your busy day, every day.
5 inches of rain by tomorrow.
Temperatures being 30 degrees above average.
Put the power of over 100 meteorologists and the worldwide resources of Fox in your hands with the Fox Weather Podcast. Precise, personal, powerful. Subscribe and listen now at foxnewspodcasts.com. Connect to Fox News Audio on the Fox News app. Listen to hear your favorite hosts like Brian Kilmeade, Jimmy Fallon, and Guy Benson standing up for what's right, live and via podcast. Just click listen, then swipe right and hear the latest.
Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Good Monday morning to you. Yeah, you got what you wished for. It's a snow day, and it was already a federal holiday anyway. Kids were already home from school, so they get to, play with the snow, and as much of it accumulates as the morning develops, they can shovel it. Put them to work, for crying out loud. We've got you covered with traffic and weather updates every 10 minutes, and we do it first here on the 5s, because 5 comes first on the clock. So make sure you stay with us all morning long. Coming up at 7:35, we'll speak with our man in Iowa, Brian Wilson, covering the Iowa caucus. And then at 8:35, Dr. Marty McCary from Johns Hopkins University. I am Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. Are you excited about the snow?
Oh, I'm excited about the snow. I'm excited. I've been wishing for it.
All right, just drive.
Calm down.
I'm worried. People don't drive properly, and it's been 2 years, and I get worried. Joining us right now, probably from St. Augustine, Florida, so he's laughing at us dealing with snow. He is, of course, the former U.S. Attorney of the District of Columbia and our legal analyst, Joe diGenova. Joe, did you make it down to Florida in time for the snow?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, then you're closer to Fani Willis, the DA of Fulton County, geographically than we are. Can you please explain this scandal that is unfolding with regard to her office and the use of government funds to what appears to be pay her lover as a special investigator or prosecutor? Why is there even this private-public partnership in the first place? And is it ethical for her to funnel money to someone she's having a romantic affair with?
Follow the money, as always. Apparently, Fani Willis and this fellow Wade, who is the special counsel that a private attorney, she plucked from anonymity to become the lead counsel in the case against Donald Trump, are having an affair. She did not deny that when she went at where all black politicians go when they want to cover their fanny. You should pardon the expression. She went to She went to Big Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Atlanta, Georgia, and she said, and I quote, "You cannot expect black women to be perfect and save the world. We need to be allowed to stumble. We need grace." Gee, it's too bad she didn't think about the president that way or anybody else. She's having a relationship with someone she is paying with public funds as a contractor for the state of Georgia and Fulton County. I would say she has, at a minimum, a conflict of interest, both personal and professional. And I think she's created a monster of an issue for the president. And the judge in the case has indicated that he intends to hold a hearing on this matter, which means testimony, affidavits, under oath. This could get very, very interesting. I think Miss Willis is in a lot of trouble.
Joe, before I hand this off to Julie Gunlock, I want because people might be hearing this for the first time, hear you quote the district attorney and think that you're exaggerating, think that you're guilty of hyperbole. Here she is at that AME church making her case.
You cannot expect black women to be perfect and save the world.
I mean, there it is, Julie. I mean, that's...
God, the narcissism, it's just unbelievable.
That's
but Joe, she also... Yeah,
it's a race card.
No one's asking her to save the world, by the way. We're just asking her to act in a professional manner. What is the process for removing this person? Because I'm just shocked. I'm shocked she's in office. It's so dangerous to have a lunatic like that in office. But what specifically and how long would it take to kick this woman out of office?
Well, removing her from office is one thing. Removing her from the case is another. The judge in the case, I believe his name is McAfee, has the authority to disqualify her on the record that exists right now and remove her from the case. And indeed, he could even disqualify the special counsel, Mr. Wade, who is her paramour, and leave them with only the line attorneys in the case. He could even, I heard a famous person say the other day on television that notwithstanding all of that, the judge did not have the authority to dismiss the case. That is absolutely wrong. A judge sitting in a case like this does have the authority to dismiss the case. When the government engages in conduct which shocks the conscience of the court, which this conduct clearly does, it is in conjunction with all of her public statements about the case and why she brought the case. This case can be dismissed. I do not expect Judge McAfee to do that, but he may very well consider it because the motion that is in front of them right now involving Fani Willis is a motion to dismiss. So the judge has a whole array of options, including disqualification, which I think may very well happen. She could very well be disqualified by this judge, who has up to now seemed to be relatively even-handed compared with the rest of everything going on in Georgia.
Meanwhile, turning to New York, Donald Trump's civil case in that state has wrapped up, and now we have to wait, right, because this is a judge rendering verdict, not a jury, and we don't know how long it takes. But I want to bounce this quote off of you, which I found fascinating for an officer of the court. The Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, said in a statement Wednesday that the trial, quote, revealed the full extent of Trump's fraud and, listen to this, quoting now, his inability to disprove it. Is that sort of the legal standard here, that it's Trump's job to go to court to disprove the charges? I thought that it was the state's responsibility to prove the charges. And it's fascinating that she didn't say she had proved them.
Well, she's been relying on that because she has a very, very bad case. She has no case at all, actually, with regard to fraud. Now, they're using a very special statute. It's a consumer fraud statute. There's no jury trial under that statute. And this is a civil proceeding. It's not a criminal case. She didn't bring a criminal case because she couldn't win one. So under civil law, you have a preponderance of the evidence. You only have to prove 51% that your case is correct. And then the burden shifts to the defendant to come back and make proofs, as they say in England, to make proofs against you. The president has done that totally. He has produced enough evidence to completely disprove her case, even though in our mindset he shouldn't have to do that. But since it's a civil case, burdens can shift, regrettably.
Well, thank you for explaining that.
Civil format. Yeah, that's why she said that. She's taking cover under the technical rules of civil procedure. But the bottom line is very simple. This judge had already made up his mind before this case started. You could tell by the way he acted, performed, spoke, and wrote. He's been overruled 4 times by the Court of Appeals. He should be taking quite a while to write an opinion because he's going to have to protect himself from an appeal by the president and the Trump organization. I don't have a lot of faith in the appellate courts in New York in light of the way they've ruled, although in the Trump case, they have stopped Judge Engoron on 4 occasions and ruled him in error. We shall see. It's hard to tell. It's New York. Anything can happen.
Well, yeah, and you saw Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank, he gave a blistering interview this weekend saying if Trump is guilty of fraud here, then literally every single person in New York who conducts any sort of real estate business is also guilty of fraud. Joe, can you stick with us? There's plenty more.
Sure.
There's questions about Jack Smith and whether he's a legitimate special counsel that's being raised now, and also this wackadoodle NBC News story that says that people at the Pentagon are already planning to undermine Trump if he becomes president. We've seen this story before.
WMAL, making sense of world events, because those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
Well, your old boss, Joe diGenova, is in the news. Former Attorney General Edwin Meese, who I happen to know from very, very reliable sources, is a regular listener to this program every morning. So good morning, Mr. Attorney General Meese. He has joined multiple law professors, including many who clerked with former Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, to challenge the appointment of Jack Smith as a prosecutor against former President Donald Trump, saying that he is ineligible to be a special counsel or a special prosecutor in this case. Do you know the details of this argument, Joe?
I do. And I must say that even though I'm sympathetic with the argument, I don't believe it's a winner. And the reason is the Supreme Court has already ruled in the famous independent counsel case that the authority to appoint these people is constitutional, with Chief Justice Rehnquist at the time writing for the court. More importantly, then Associate Justice Antonin Scalia dissented vigorously, saying that these appointments were not only unconstitutional, but very dangerous to give one person all that power and money to concentrate on one individual. Scalia proved to be correct in reality, and later the Democrats gave up on the independent counsel statute and allowed it to die when Bill Clinton had 6 of them appointed in his administration. The Democrats decided it wasn't such a hot idea. I think that probably Jack Smith is the closest you're ever going to come to an illegal, unconstitutional appointment, but the court will never strike it down because they're going to leave that up to the Attorney General. And since the Attorney General said it's okay, and he is the chief law enforcement officer for practical purposes in these cases, and signed the appointment, my guess is the court's going to go along with it. They may not be happy, but I don't think they're going to strike it down. It's a good argument. I like it. I would make it in any case to preserve the issue, but I don't think it's a winner. By the way, they mentioned a bunch of former special counsels, and they didn't mention me, which I thought was, on their part, they should all be embarrassed because I was the best one.
Well, embarrassing oversight. Egregious. In fact, Ed Meese, what are you thinking, sir?
That's all right. God bless him. He's a wonderful man. I'm sure it was just a quick write.
Well, listen, I want to pivot over to this, as Larry said, sort of bonkers story coming out from NBC. It's reporting the Democrats are preparing to remove the president's control of the military if Trump is elected. So removing his control over the military, to preserve democracy or something. Have you read this story, and what are your thoughts?
This is another example of burning the village down in order to save it. What you have here is an unconstitutional effort on the part of the Democrats. That shouldn't surprise anybody because they love to ignore the Constitution or change it when they don't like what's happening in the world. What you have here is the president is in the Constitution. He is Article 2. He is Article 2. He is named the Commander-in-Chief in Article 2. They cannot remove his power. They will try to do everything they can. If they run the House and the Senate, Trump's presidency is over, by the way. Forget it. He'll never be able to get anything done. It'll all be executive orders and litigation. So people who are out there thinking about whether or not they're going to vote, they better get out and vote, and they better vote for the House and the Senate. They better vote straight Republican ticket. No matter what you think of all these candidates or anything, you got to do that. But what the Democrats are proposing is absolutely unconstitutional. The notion that some legal scholar could come up with this idea that you can do this is absolutely disgraceful. This is nuts, absolutely nuts.
Well, and that's saying something considering the news cycle that we're in the middle of, Joe diGenova. Hunter Biden, with his stunt appearing at the Oversight Committee as they were contemplating the contempt of Congress. I've seen some so-called legal experts saying this was a brilliant jujitsu move by Hunter Biden's legal team. What are they talking about?
Well, when he showed up at the hearing, it was to get footage for a documentary that his friend and lawyer and payor, Mr. Norris, who was sitting next to him, they were getting footage for a documentary.
Okay.
And when it got bad, he left, which was something that he wanted. He wants a film of showing him walking out. But I'll tell you what else happened after that. After that, the White House counsel got in contact with Abby Lowell and the president's son's legal team and said, this is over.
Cut it out.
You stop this. You're hurting the president. I don't care what movie you're making, what documentary, this is over. You either comply with his subpoena or shut up. Stop doing stunts. And he's going to comply, but he's going to go up and he's going to take the fifth. He's going to do what he should have done in the beginning. He's going to take the fifth. The subpoena will be enforced. He's going to show up. By the way, the House should continue with its contempt citation against him on the subpoena that he's already under subpoena. Abby Lowell is demanding a new subpoena to come up and testify. That's ludicrous. They should ignore him, hold him in contempt, and just let the White House suffer through a contempt referral. Merrick Garland, of course, will never prosecute the president's son because he knows the president will pardon him in a New York minute. But what you see happening now is that stunt the other day where he showed up at the hearing was a contemptuous act. And in fact, it will be evidence. It will be evidence in the contempt proceeding that he was contemptuous of Congress. But I can tell you right now, the White House counsel was furious about that.
Yeah, perhaps when we're trying to combat allegations that you have contempt for Congress, you should not show so much contempt for Congress. Joe, real fast, and I do mean real fast, any thoughts on the Iowa caucus tonight?
Trump wins, but it's not going to be 50%, and the media will then declare him the loser.
Thank you, Joe. Have a good one. It's 7:24. Recent.
Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
7:36 on this Monday morning. Good Martin Luther King Day to one and all. We also have our first snow in like 2 years. It's happening right now. If you got to go out, if you've got to drive, it's ugly. We're getting reports. Friend of the program, Carrie Lucas, was out. And so what did she say, Julie Gunlock? How many?
Yeah, she said, let me find her message here. She said that she was driving and she saw a ton of accidents all around the Seven Corners area. That's in Virginia. So be careful.
Be careful. Be careful. And Jamie Whitten's got you covered every 10 minutes, of course, on the fives. Also coming up at 8:35, we'll check in with our friend Dr. Marty McCary at Johns Hopkins about the masks we're starting to see pop up left and right. That's all coming up. But first... That's right. It's time. Forget about the talking and the analyzing and the predicting and the polling. It's time for some voting or some caucusing, I suppose. And joining us live from Iowa, he's the host of The Drive with Brian Wilson on our sister station WTN in Nashville. He is the aforementioned Brian Wilson. Morning, Brian.
Hey, good morning to you, Larry. It is a balmy minus 14 degrees right now here in Des Moines, Iowa. Larry, it is so cold.
How cold is it?
It's colder than Bill Hess's heart. That's what it is.
Oh, a gratuitous slam on our fun-loving, evil program director. Brian. The temperature, of course, other than us radio hosts just whining about how cold it is, which is sort of our God-given right, it also could very well affect the turnout, right? Because caucuses, as everybody knows, is not just showing up whenever you want and voting. You got to get out there, you got to show up, and then you got to stay for a couple of hours at your caucus place. What are people saying about the turnout prospects here for the candidates?
You talk to people. Of course, I went to events yesterday where people are motivated to get out in it and go see a candidate, Nikki Haley or Vivek or DeSantis, or there was a rally for Trump as well in Indianola, and people show up, but those people are motivated, and I think though that it's not going to be that big a deal. People up here are used to cold weather. I mean, not usually this cold, but. They're used to cold weather. They're a hardy bunch. It will probably suppress turnout somewhat, but I don't think a great deal. And it could be over pretty quick tonight. The expectation, if everything goes according to some of the polling data, it's going to be a very good night for Donald Trump. The question is who comes in second, and I think there's a developing story about Nikki Haley that's worthy of mention.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. There is a rumor, big thread on Twitter talking about how this is already arranged, that Nikki's going to be his running mate, that she will be second in Iowa, and then soon after they will announce she is his running mate. She will endorse him, and that's partly explains the attacks on Vivek this weekend. Tell us how you feel about what you're hearing there.
Well, I'm not so sure. I mean, I was at an event last night with Nikki Haley, and she's coming on pretty strong in her attacks on Trump, and says, "Look, he was the right president for the time," and of course, she was a part of that administration, so she has to say that. But she says, "But wherever he goes, the crazy comes along, and we could do with a lot less of that." And so I don't see that. But she is going to be the beneficiary probably of a lot of the votes that would have gone to Chris Christie. Probably won't get her across the threshold for a win here in Iowa, but she's put a lot of money into New Hampshire, and she's, according to some polling, doing fairly well there. And with Chris Christie out, and he had about 10-12% of the vote wrapped up in New Hampshire, if she were to pick that up, she could come out of here with a second maybe, and then go on to New Hampshire to potentially win if things go well for her. And then it becomes a question about Ron DeSantis. And many people are looking at Ron DeSantis and wondering, you spend a lot of money, you don't seem to be getting traction in Iowa or New Hampshire. How long are you going to stay in? He says he's going to South Carolina, but, a lot of people say, well, that's what they would always say. You never want to admit just before a caucus that you're about to pull out. So the question is, will he get out, and then where would that support go? And then if you got Christie people out, and you got Ron DeSantis people out potentially by the time you get to New Hampshire, then it becomes a much more competitive race. But again, some of these polls that you see around the country, Donald Trump's leading by 30, 40, even 50 points in some states.
Brian Wilson's our guest from WTN. He's out in Des Moines right now covering the caucus. Brian, we've known each other a dozen years now. Sometimes I can be contrarian. I don't know if you remember that about me.
I've heard that.
So forgive me, because I don't want to sort of burst all the cable news bubbles here, because everyone's there and you're on the ground, and God knows WTN spent good money to have you there. But as our friend Derek Hunter points out at townhall.com, Ted Cruz, Rick Santorum, and Mike Huckabee are the last three winners of contested Republican caucuses in Iowa. In other words, does this even matter? I mean, even if somebody, obviously if Trump loses, that would be a huge story, but Iowa doesn't tend to make a big difference anymore, does it?
Well, I think it is. Let me just put it this way. We hear from the politicians, and we hear from the pundits, and we hear from the pollsters. Yeah. This is the first time where people actually get up and speak. Iowa can be contrarian, you're right. But I mean, Donald Trump says he's going to win by 50 points. He's going to get at least 50% of the vote.
Yeah, last poll showed him at 48, which is the best a Republican has done in a while. Yeah.
So I mean, it's going to be, if everything goes as planned, going to be a pretty good night for him. I think probably Nikki Haley comes in second, and then it's a question who comes in third and fourth. Is it DeSantis or is it Vivek? I went to Vivek's thing yesterday. Let me just say this about Vivek.
Yeah.
His numbers are not showing up on the polls very well, but I wouldn't be surprised if he outperforms his poll expectations a bit.
Oh, all right.
He's done the full Chuck Grassley, which is to say he's visited all 99 counties in Iowa, not once but twice.
Yeah,
and
that's amazing.
He's picked up on a big local issue, which has to do with somebody wanting to build a pipeline across Iowa and use eminent domain to gain the land for it. And it's very controversial, and he's been hitting that. Nobody else has really been hitting that. He had a pretty feisty turnout yesterday. I was at an event with him early. I don't think he's going to win, but I think he might exceed expectations somewhat. Right. But again, the real question is, can anybody beat Donald Trump at this point, given the polling data which shows him so far ahead in most of these states? The one exception to that is it's a lot tighter in New Hampshire, where Nikki Haley has spent a ton of money.
The fact that the big storyline coming out of Iowa is who's going to finish second, I think, also speaks volumes. Real fast, Brian, what's your favorite deep-fried food on a stick you have enjoyed there while in Iowa?
Well, I didn't do any but there's a pork tenderloin sandwich, which if you are from the South, you know a little something about something called chicken fried steak.
Oh, sure.
Which is neither chicken or it is steak, but it's fried.
It's definitely fried.
Yeah. It's fried. It's chicken. It's fried like a chicken. And here they have a pork tenderloin sandwich, which is the real delicacy. The bun is the regular size bun. The meat is about the size of a hubcap. It's astonishing.
Exactly.
Well, that's fantastic. I like that. Although if I remember, the regular size bun thing would kind of throw me off.
It's
I like big
carb.
buns.
It's low carb.
All right. Thank
you like
Brian.
big buns, you cannot lie. I know.
There it is. I knew there'd be a Sir Mix-a-Lot pickup there. Thank you, Brian. Stay warm. All right.
Okay. It's too late for that. But thank you, Larry. Good talking to you.
We will be checking out your coverage on WTN there in Nashville. It's 7:45. Set that aside for a second. What's up with Joe Biden? Well, John Carl, ABC News, delivers the news.
They aren't improving. In fact, they seem to be going in the other direction. Our poll this morning has Biden's approval rating at 33%. That's historically low for him, low for an incumbent president. It's at 15 years since we see numbers that low. And on the economy, it's even actually worse. Only 31% say that they approve of Biden's handling of the economy.
Yeah, and that 31% are the people who got handouts or government contracts, by the way. 33% approve, but even buried in that lead, Julie Gunlock, the disapproval number. The disapproval number for Joe Biden on his job performance, 58%.
Wow. Now we're only audio, but if you saw the video, John Carl was actually crying.
Yes,
delivering that news. Yeah.
Well,
and he had two phones up to his ears because he's got to plan the insurrection.
This is why John Carl's book and all of the reports you see from him or from Joe and Mika or anyone else in the media, it has nothing to do with how great the economy is, how great our national security is, how great our crime problem is. They're not talking about anything good that Joe Biden has done. All they're talking about is if Trump wins, it's the end of our country. It's fascism. It's authoritarianism. It's Hitler. We're still a year out, and they're already beating that drum.
Well, and this is why you're seeing reports from NBC that there's this sort of deep state planning going on to take military control away from the president if he does win.